Your version still stands, to me, it grossed over $500 million. And what do you think it is that they're failing to do?
Cast me?
So, Fantastic Four First Steps has only grossed $11.7 million in its second Friday on the big screen, making a 80% drop from its debut, making this movie officially a financial flop year.
Fantastic Four First Steps crashes again at the box office in its third weekend. And keep in mind, this is after Bob Iger, just like he did for Thunderbolts when he talked about, oh my gosh, we're so happy with the success of Thunderbolts, blah, blah, blah. This is after Bob Iger does Damage Control, basically lies to everybody and talks about what a successful start to a franchise, a new franchise in the MCU that this is.
Brand Marvel used to sell tickets in and of itself. It almost didn't matter what the movie was. People were interested because they were so bought into the MCU. And in particular, late into phase 3, it was just, people trusted they were going to get a good movie. Or
Disney boss Bob Iger says Marvel's Fantastic Four reboot has successfully launched this important franchise into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The reality is this is another box office loser for Disney.
Call me old school, but I believe the reason why these movies are flopping is because that nobody wants to see a standalone Marvel movie or an origin story, really. The Marvel Universe has been established. People want to see their favorite characters always interacting with each other.
The numbers are bleak for Disney Marvel's Fantastic Four. In fact, now that we have 3 weekends worth of data, this is a movie that is going to struggle to hit $500 million. I think it'll do it. I think it'll get there, probably just a little bit above, but it is not guaranteed. It is now going to be a struggle for this movie to get to $500 million.
Brand Marvel used to sell tickets in and of itself. It almost didn't matter what the movie was. People were interested because they were so bought into the MCU. And in particular, late into phase 3, it was just, people trusted they were going to get a good movie. Or
Pedro Pascal, the internet's boyfriend and the internet's daddy. These are what the media call this man. I think people are a little sick of Pedro Pascal, to be honest, and you're seeing it everywhere. Fantastic Four, bombing. This movie is not going to make its money back. You can look at the numbers. Eddington is another bomb for him. That movie had a low budget and still didn't bring its money back. You can now stream it. We've got numbers for that one. And guess what? There are people actually suggesting the man drop acting and get into politics. That's right. He could be the next governor of California.
Like, Fantastic Four is a good movie, but it's nowhere near as fun as Jurassic World and Superman. So I don't know if families, like if kids like Superman or Jurassic World more, maybe that's it. I'm kind of trying to think of a reason, because the reviews are great. People are giving it high praise online. I personally like Superman better, but I mean, I like Fantastic Four. So yeah, I'm surprised it had that much of a dip. Like 65% is pretty, that's substantial.
So here's the piece from Deadline Magazine. Fantastic Four First Steps, $40 million second frame. Just to remind you, it wasn't even a week ago that Deadline Magazine was projecting a $48 million second weekend, a 60% drop from the first weekend. And then over the next few days after that, it became a 45 to 47.
What if Marvel's long-awaited comeback wasn't just another disappointment, but the moment fans finally realized the magic was gone?
Where Bob Iger is now having issues with Pedro Pascal. Just days ago, they already punished Pascal by reducing his press tour appearances and urging him to stop and cut it out with his. However, now Bob Iger took action against Pedro in the most unexpected way possible, where he canceled an entire featurette for Fantastic Four that was filmed focusing strictly on Pedro as Reed Richards.
For years, the Marvel logo alone was enough to sell out theaters. People didn't even care what the movie was. They trusted the brand. But now, after one of the most hyped reboots in the studio's history, audiences aren't just disappointed. They're angry, they're laughing, and they're walking away in numbers Marvel never thought possible.
It's like we see with every single Marvel movie released. The big lead up, the excitement, the hype that the mainstream media desperately tries to generate. Then the early early access screenings come out and they tell you it's the best thing ever. Then the reviews come out. Then the opening weekend happens. And even when the opening weekend is weak, like it was with Fantastic Four First Steps, they tell you, oh my gosh, everybody, Marvel's back. Watch out.
The Fantastic Four reboot, called First Steps, was supposed to be Marvel's grand reset, a new beginning, a way to silence critics who said the MCU was losing steam. With an A-list cast, a blockbuster budget, and Marvel's biggest promises since Endgame, this was supposed to remind fans why they fell in love with superheroes in the first place. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. This isn't just another Marvel misstep. It's being called the studio's biggest embarrassment since the infamous 2015 Fantastic Disaster. Think about that for a second. Marvel, a company that built its empire on fan loyalty, spent over $250 million only to create a movie that audiences compared to a PowerPoint presentation.
We're told by Marvel repeatedly that Fantastic Four was a new start and a really important moment for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not only was this movie going to blow your mind, but it was also going to lead into Avengers Doomsday, this massive team up that Marvel is spending so much money putting together that needs to be big for them. As a result, this movie, Fantastic Four, the lead-in, needed to be big for them. Unfortunately, that was not the case. After a rather pedestrian and weak opening weekend, it fell off hard at
critics who usually pull their punches didn't even bother being polite. Words like soulless, corporate sludge, and even a funeral disguised as a blockbuster started flooding early reviews. And when you've got fans walking out of a UK premiere, fans who were literally paid to be there, that's not just bad press, that's insult.
And it always ends up happening this way, where the second weekend falls off a cliff, and that is what we saw for Fantastic Four. But would it rebound in its third weekend? Well, of course it didn't.
But how did it get this bad? How did Marvel turn what should have been a safe bet, one of the most beloved superhero teams in comic history, into a disaster fans now joke about online? It wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of bad decisions, shocking controversies, and a studio in panic mode. And at the center of the storm was the man who was supposed to save it all, Pedro Pascal. Let's start with the moment things began to unravel. On paper, Fantastic Four First Steps had everything going for it. A fresh director, a stacked cast, and years of fan anticipation. Marvel hyped this movie as the reset button that would fix everything people complained about in Phase 4 and 5. It wasn't just a film. It was supposed to be the bridge into Avengers Doomsday, the massive team-up movie Disney has already poured hundreds of millions into. The stakes couldn't have been higher. But even before it officially hit theaters, warning signs started to leak out. Test screenings, usually kept under lock and key, began to trickle online, and the word was savage. Viewers described the movie as mid-messy, and worst of all, lacking any soul. That last one stung, because Marvel has always sold itself as more than just superhero fights. It was about heart, family, sacrifice. And if your test audiences are saying they felt nothing, that's a red flag you can't ignore. Then came the premiere. This wasn't just some local theater showing. This was London, packed with influencers and critics flown in to hype the film. But instead of glowing Instagram posts, reports surfaced of walkouts, not random audience members either, people who were literally paid to attend. One influencer posted, then quickly deleted, a savage line that instantly went viral. Felt like watching a PowerPoint presentation on trauma bonding. I left before the planet exploded. That's not the review you want spreading when you've spent $250 million. From there, the movie's opening weekend confirmed the nightmare. Instead of smashing the box office, First Steps stumbled out of the gate. Fans who once defended Marvel no matter what, people who bent over backwards to spin Eternals or Quantumania, finally gave up. Rotten Tomatoes reviews described the film as lifeless, soulless, and even a disgrace to the franchise. And when your audience is saying that your shiny 2025 reboot is actually worse than the 2015 disaster everyone roasts, you know you're in trouble. Marvel didn't just lose money, they lost something more important. They lost trust. The brand that once guaranteed excitement was suddenly being roasted in memes and TikToks compared to fan fiction and video game cutscenes. And while fans were tearing the film apart online, something else was brewing behind the scenes. Because one name kept popping up in every conversation, every review, and every controversy: Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal was supposed to be Marvel's golden ticket. He was the internet's boyfriend, the internet's daddy, the beloved star of The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. Casting him as Reed Richards, Marvel's smartest man, felt like a guaranteed win. Fans expected charm, gravitas, leadership, the kind of presence that could carry a franchise for the next decade. Instead, what they got shocked everyone. On screen, Pascal looked checked out. Critics described his performance as bored, even creepy. Lines that should have carried emotional weight came out flat, almost mumbled. Instead of Reed Richards, the genius leader of the Fantastic Four, audiences saw Pedro Pascal stumbling through dialogue as if he'd rather be anywhere else. One review even joked it looked like Pascal was thinking about his Postmates order during a key emotional scene. And the chemistry? Non-existent. moment. The relationship between Reed Richards and Sue Storm is the heart of the Fantastic Four. It's what makes them more than just another team of superheroes. But on screen, Pascal and Vanessa Kirby looked less like lovers and more like co-workers pretending to be married in a training video. And shockingly, director Matt Shakman admitted he didn't even screen test the leads together. That one decision backfired spectacularly and fans noticed immediately. But the problems didn't end when the camera stopped rolling. Off-screen, Pascal became his own controversy magnet. During the press tour, his interviews often went viral for all the wrong reasons. Instead of charming fans, he alienated them, making social statements, clashing with reporters, and at one point even roasting Marvel fans outright. For a studio that depends on fan loyalty, this was a disaster. Social media, once filled with memes praising Pascal as internet's daddy, suddenly flipped. Hashtags criticizing his behavior began trending. Clips of awkward red carpet moments circulated with captions like, "This is the guy leading Marvel's future?" And when reports surfaced that Disney executives, including Bob Iger himself, were quietly reducing Pascal's press appearances and even canceling a featurette centered entirely on him, the message was clear. The studio was losing confidence in its star. For Marvel, this was supposed to be a comeback. Instead, their leading man became the symbol of everything going wrong, and the backlash was only just beginning. When the dust from the premiere started settling, it wasn't just fans who were upset. Behind the scenes, the fallout reached the very top of Disney. Bob Iger, the CEO who had once been praised for Marvel's unstoppable rise, now found himself staring at numbers that told a grim story. Not only was First Steps failing, it was dragging the entire brand down with it. Executives inside Disney were already nervous. They'd poured hundreds of millions into Avengers, Doomsday, a project that relied on Fantastic Four being a success. The plan was simple: reintroduce Marvel's first family, spark fan excitement, and set up the next giant crossover. But with First Steps bombing, that plan was in jeopardy. And the biggest problem, at least in the eyes of leadership, was Pedro Pascal. Reports surfaced that Iger himself intervened in ways Marvel fans had never seen before. One of the most shocking moves, he ordered the cancellation of a featurette that had already been filmed, one that was designed to spotlight Pascal's role as Reed Richards. Imagine that, the star of the reboot, sidelined by his own studio. To many insiders, it was a sign Disney had lost faith in their leading man. But it didn't stop there. Pascal's press tour appearances were reportedly scaled back, with handlers instructed to keep him away from topics that could trigger more backlash. The studio's message was simple: stop talking, stop making headlines, and let the storm blow over. The problem was, the storm only grew louder. Fans noticed the silence. They noticed when Pascal, once plastered across every interview, every magazine cover, and every red carpet moment, started fading into the background. They noticed when questions about him were dodged, or when other cast members were pushed forward instead. Instead of cooling the fire, Disney's attempts at damage control only fueled speculation. Was Marvel preparing to replace Pascal? Were they already regretting their casting choice? And while all this was happening, one group of people saw the perfect chance to step back into the spotlight: the original cast of Fantastic Four. Just when Marvel thought the backlash couldn't get any worse, the internet pulled off the ultimate twist, turning its attention to the original Fantastic Four cast. Yes, the same cast that critics once roasted for being too campy, too cheesy, and too forgettable. Suddenly, Jessica Alba, Eoin Gruffudd, Michael Chiklis, and even Chris Evans were back in the conversation, and for all the right reasons. It all started with Jessica Alba. When asked in an interview why she thought the reboot failed, Alba didn't hold back. Her response? Because they didn't cast me. At first, people thought she was joking, but then she doubled down, saying that her original cast had the chemistry Marvel had been chasing for years. Within hours, #recast Jessica was trending on Twitter. Fans began posting side-by-side comparisons of Alba's 2005 Invisible Woman versus Vanessa Kirby's 2025 version. And the irony? Alba, an actress once criticized for being too Hollywood, suddenly looked more authentic, more natural, and more connected to the role than Kirby did with a $250 million budget behind her. And Alba wasn't the only one throwing shade. Eoin Gruffudd, the original Reed Richards, gave a cryptic interview when asked if he'd ever return. His response? "I'd come back if it felt like a real story again." Translation: not this mess. Meanwhile, Michael Chiklis, who played the Thing, didn't even bother with words. He posted a gif of himself smashing through a wall with the caption, "Sometimes you just have to break through the noise." Fans instantly interpreted it as a jab at Marvel's CGI-heavy redesign of the Thing, which had already been roasted online for looking like a PlayStation 3 cutscene. But perhaps the most telling silence came from Chris Evans. Normally, Evans is the first to support Marvel projects, even ones he isn't involved in. But when First Steps premiered, he said nothing. No tweets, no interviews, no support. And for fans, that silence spoke louder than any comment. The result? The 2005 cast, once a punchline, suddenly became fan favorites again. Memes flooded TikTok and Reddit, with people joking that Alba, Gruffudd, and Chiklis had more chemistry in one deleted scene than Pascal and Kirby had in an entire reboot. Fans started begging Marvel to bring the old cast back in some kind of multiverse redemption arc. And the craziest part? The idea didn't sound so far-fetched anymore. Because while Marvel was busy defending a $250 million flop, the internet was celebrating the very cast they'd spent years roasting. It was proof that no matter how much money you throw at a project, no matter how many stars you cast, you can't fake soul. And the old cast's confidence only highlighted what the new cast was missing. As bad as the casting drama was, nothing prepared fans for the story itself. Because once audiences actually sat through First Steps, they realized the problem wasn't just Pedro Pascal, or even the lack of chemistry between the cast. The biggest issue was the script. Marvel had promised Cosmic Wonder, a story that would push the MCU into bold new territory. Instead, they delivered a plot so bizarre it felt like parody. The central conflict? Galactus, one of Marvel's most legendary villains, threatening to devour Earth unless Sue Storm handed over her unborn child. Yes, you heard that right. The fate of the planet rested on a cosmic cannibal demanding an infant. Even hardcore Marvel loyalists didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Reviews compared it to a lifetime melodrama dressed up in superhero costumes. Some joked it felt like Avengers, Teen Mom. For a studio once known for carefully crafted story arcs, this wasn't just a misstep, it was embarrassing. And the chaos didn't end there. Silver Surfer, reimagined as a female character, was hyped as one of the movie's big surprises. But her role was so rushed it bordered on meaningless. She appeared briefly, flipped sides twice in the span of a few scenes, and then gone before the audience could care. No build-up, no payoff, just wasted potential. Then came Dr. Doom, Marvel's crown jewel villain, shoved into a last-minute post-credit scene. Instead of building anticipation, the cameo felt like desperation, as if the studio threw him in at the 11th hour to distract fans from how hollow the rest of the movie felt. For critics, it was easy ammo. One reviewer wrote, "This isn't storytelling, this is corporate fan fiction stitched together by terrified executives." Fans echoed the same sentiment on social media, roasting the convoluted pregnancy storyline, roasting Galactus's strange ASMR voice, and flooding TikTok with memes of Vanessa Kirby clutching her stomach while Pedro Pascal stared blankly into space. What Marvel promised was the grand return of the Fantastic Four. What they delivered was a Frankenstein script that felt written by committee, and fans weren't having it. The truth is, the chaos on screen was only a reflection of what was happening behind the scenes. For years, Kevin Feige was praised as the mastermind of the MCU, the man with a magic touch who could weave multiple franchises into one unstoppable juggernaut. But now, even insiders are saying the empire is cracking. Marvel executives reportedly knew First Steps was in serious trouble long before its release. That's why the movie went through endless reshoots and at least 3 different cuts. One version supposedly wiped the entire team in a multiverse collapse. Another had Sue Storm giving birth to Franklin Richards, glowing like some kind of cosmic messiah. Both tested horribly with audiences. Panicked, Marvel cobbled together a third version, the one that eventually hit theaters. But by then, it was too late. Instead of a unified vision, the final film felt like a patchwork of studio notes and desperate last-minute changes. Emotional scenes came off flat, action sequences dragged, and worst of all, the story had no heart. Even critics who once defended Marvel admitted the franchise was slipping into soulless product mode. Behind closed doors, the fallout grew uglier. Disney executives reportedly held emergency meetings, with Bob Iger demanding a back-to-basics approach for Phase 6. There are even whispers that Marvel might soft reboot the reboot, writing First Steps off as a multiverse anomaly, pretending it never happened. Think about that. A movie marketed as Marvel's Grand Reset, erased within months of release. That's not a stumble, that's desperation. And the cast didn't escape unscathed either. Rumors suggest Pascal may not return at all, viewed now as a liability instead of a franchise leader. Even Vanessa Kirby, one of the stronger performers, is said to be frustrated after her character arc was ruined in editing. The studio that once felt untouchable now looked directionless, scrambling to hold together a universe that used to build itself on fan trust. But fans weren't buying it anymore, because outside the boardrooms, something far more dangerous was happening: a cultural revolt. If Marvel thought audiences would simply move on, they were wrong, because what happened after First Steps bombed wasn't just another round of bad reviews. It was a full-on fan revolt. Social media lit up like wildfire. On Reddit, massive threads tore the movie apart, with tens of thousands of upvotes on posts calling it corporate fan fiction, and a highlight reel edited by someone who's never finished a sentence. TikTok became a battlefield of memes, roasting Galactus's soft-spoken ASMR voice and the absurd baby bargain plotline. One viral edit even spliced clips of Teen Mom with First Steps, captioned, "Marvel's new direction is wild." But it didn't stop with jokes. Hashtags like #RestoreThe2005 cast began trending, with fans begging Marvel to bring back Jessica Alba, Johan Gruffud, and Michael Chiklis in some kind of multiverse redemption. The irony was painful. The cast, once roasted for being too cheesy, was now celebrated as the real Fantastic Four, while Marvel's shiny, expensive reboot became the punchline. Even loyal fans, the ones who defended Eternals and Quantumania, finally admitted defeat. YouTube reviewers who had once given Marvel the benefit of the doubt tore First Steps apart, calling it soulless and the moment Marvel lost its way. Some even declared this film the breaking point, the moment audiences stopped trusting forcing Marvel to deliver the basics of superhero storytelling. And it wasn't just about one flop. The conversation shifted to something bigger: Marvel's identity. Once, the studio had been synonymous with heart, adventure, and characters fans could root for. Now, people saw a corporation chasing profits, throwing CGI at the screen, and expecting audiences to clap. The revolt wasn't just about disappointment, it was about betrayal. Fans weren't angry because Marvel made one bad movie. They were angry because Marvel had stopped listening, stopped caring, and in their eyes, stopped respecting the audience. By now, the writing was on the wall. First Steps wasn't just a box office bomb, it was a cultural embarrassment. The memes, the walkouts, the scathing reviews, all of it added up to one undeniable truth: Marvel had lost the magic. Inside the industry, whispers grew louder. Insiders claimed Kevin Feige's once unshakable influence was slipping. Disney executives worried the MCU had peaked, and instead of innovation, the studio was chasing shortcuts, multiverse gimmicks, star-studded casting, and endless reboots. What had once felt like a carefully mapped-out saga now looked like panic in motion, and the fans, they stopped playing along. The old formula, announce a movie, tease a cameo, promise it all leads to the next big event, wasn't working anymore. People didn't want promises, they wanted soul. And when the biggest takeaway from your $250 million blockbuster is a trending hashtag about Jessica Alba, you've officially lost the culture. The truth is, First Steps symbolized more than a failed reboot. It symbolized the collapse of trust. For years, Marvel built its empire on the belief that every film was part of something bigger, that fans could invest their time and emotion knowing it would all pay off. But after this disaster, that illusion shattered. The brand that once felt invincible now looked fragile, desperate even. And in a way, that's why the backlash hit so hard. Fans weren't just roasting a bad movie, they were mourning the Marvel they used to know. At the end of the day, Fantastic Four: First Steps will be remembered as more than just another Marvel flop. It'll be remembered as the moment fans stopped believing the studio could do no wrong. Think about what Marvel once represented: Iron Man, the Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame. These weren't just movies, they were cultural events. They inspired, they thrilled, they made people believe in heroes again. And all of that happened because those stories had something today's Marvel seems to have forgotten: heart. First Steps had everything money could buy: big-name actors, endless CGI, and a marketing campaign that promised the world. But what it didn't have was soul. It didn't have the chemistry, the storytelling, or the emotional core that makes audiences care. And no amount of reboots, no multiverse trick, and no flashy casting stunt will fix that. Fans don't want a product, they want a story. They don't want endless setups, they want payoffs. And until Marvel rediscovers that simple truth, every grand reset will collapse the same way this one did. So maybe Jessica Alba was right, maybe it really did fail because they didn't cast her. But the deeper truth is this: until Marvel remembers why people fell in love with superheroes in the first place, no actor, no director, and no budget can save them. Because superheroes aren't just costumes, they aren't just box office numbers, they're stories about heart, sacrifice, and hope. And until Marvel brings that back, every reboot will burn just like First Steps.